Hi, folks. Welcome back to Racin-n-Braisin. I am CJ. It is Sunday, and that means we're going to dive into a couple of things here today before the race gets going. We're going to talk about picks, talk about what we've seen so far this weekend, and then dive into what I have decided to do for my menu for today's race. So let's get right into it. First and foremost, let's get the picks out of the way. I called Mom first thing this morning as I woke up because I've got stuff to do, and I know you do too. I had first pick today, and I decided to go with the hot hand for the weekend, Kyle Larson. I think he's going to dominate again today. Hopefully that pans out for me. But of course, that left the field and left Mom to pick Hamlin. That's right. So she's geared up for another good points day as well. Larson versus Hamlin in today's picks between myself and my mom. Can Hamlin get his third in a row? Can Larson bounce back from a poor showing at Darlington? All right, let's dive into what we've seen so far this weekend. The big issue that we were anticipating to be an issue is tire wear. And what we saw yesterday in Cup practice is extreme tire wear, at least on Ricky Stenhouse's car. Saw the cording throughout the practice. I don't remember noting any other teams' tires looking like that. I don't think the broadcast showed anybody else. I think they just focused on Stenhouse because it was such an extreme case. I did hear Larry Mack say that he felt like the tire wear in this year's practice versus last spring's practice is worse. He's anticipating more tire wear than what we saw last spring. And if you remember, last spring was a crazy race because the tires were just falling apart. What we're seeing with this weekend's practice is that at about the 35 to 40 lap mark, the tires are just coming apart. Is that going to hold true for today's race? I saw a couple of things yesterday and this morning that make me have a bit of a pause about what we're going to see in today's tire wear. First thing, yesterday's Xfinity race laid down a lot of rubber, so I think that is going to help with today's tire wear. It's actually going to decrease the amount of tire wear. And the other thing I saw in the Xfinity race yesterday was that the PJ1 in the lower half of the corner actually created a bit of a separation. It got worn down so much that there were two very distinct grooves of PJ1, and the middle of that was worn away. We'll see if the track has applied more PJ1 this morning or if they've left it alone. I don't know that answer. I guess we'll find that out pre-race. But that will definitely have an impact in the tire wear today. The other big impact today is going to be the weather. It is going to be much warmer today. They said about 15 degrees ambient difference in temperature today at the start of today's race than it was at yesterday's practice. And then the final thing that I think is going to contribute to how the race plays out with the tires is that the teams have a playbook to work off of from last year. And I think the bigger teams like the Gibbs and the Hendricks, those A-tier teams, are going to have a strong enough notebook to work off of that they're going to be able to handle this amount of tire wear. And I don't think it's going to be as much of a crap show as we saw last year. We don't really know what's going to happen. Nobody ever really does until the green flag drops, and we just have to stick with it until that checkered flag drops at the end. I'm hoping we don't get that snoozer that we got last fall with Larson dominating 450 of the 500 laps. So that's what we've got on tap for today's race. Let's talk about what we've seen for the racing so far this weekend. Not much to say about the Xfinity race, right? One very dramatic wreck early on in the race that put debris all over the place. We haven't seen a bad wreck like that in a while. Good to see the drivers walk away from that one because that was a really hard hit. Sheldon Creed really took a smack there. And then the other part of the Xfinity race yesterday was that Kyle Larson just absolutely dominated that race. I was watching the leaderboard on my tablet while I had the Xfinity hack rolling yesterday, at one point yesterday, I saw Larson out to an 8.1 second lead. When you're doing a 16-second lap, that's pretty dang impressive. Xfinity race, bit of a snoozer, not all that compelling. We kind of expected that with Larson taking the pole yesterday and then just dominating that race. Race was pretty compelling. First and foremost, I was surprised that they even got it in. It had rained most of the day, rained out practice, rained out qualifying, but miraculously the skies held off and they got that race in. Chandler Smith was very impressive. He was fast all night long, clearly had the dominant truck, was even better than Kyle Larson, which is a lot to say, but clearly that team had a good grip on what they needed to do. And Chandler Smith is always good at Bristol. So, no surprise that he was going to put on a good show. The thing about the truck race that I really want to comment on, and this is something that I sent a message to Mom about, there were some trucks out there that had no business being out there. They were dangerously slow. We had our, dozen or so of the normal fast trucks that were running up front. And then you had your normal dozen or so of the back marker trucks that, don't have as much funding and are expected to be a little bit slower. But then there were a handful of trucks out there that it wasn't that the truck was slow, it's that the driver had no business being out there. We saw some really wild passing, wild racing in that bull ring on Friday night. Some of those drivers didn't belong out there, should not have been out in that race, especially with no practice and no qualifying. But, the show must go on, and that's what happened. It created some compelling situations where we saw some 3 and 4 wide racing at Bristol, and you just don't ever see that. Let's move on to what I have got on the menu for today. Yes, I did finally make a decision. Had some chicken on the brain, so I decided to go with barbecue chicken today. Last night, I pulled out a 4-pack of chicken thighs, bone in, skin on, let them thaw naturally for a couple of hours, and then threw them into a brine. Now, I brine all of my chicken, regardless of what I'm doing and regardless of what cut I'm using. And I have the general formula that I use for my brine: water, apple cider vinegar, salt, pepper, garlic, onion, soy sauce, and a touch of liquid smoke. Now, key things to remember there as far as ratios go, I generally go a 10-to-1 water to vinegar ratio. And then the soy sauce, I keep that even lower. If the vinegar is the one part in the 10-to-1, then I make the soy sauce like a 0.1 of that. Just a touch of it, just enough to give it some like umami, some earthiness to it. And I do just a couple of drops of liquid smoke in there because, hey, it's a barbecue chicken, so I want that smokiness in there. I generally try to shoot for at least 2 to 4 hours on a brine. If I have the opportunity and if I'm thinking far enough ahead, I'll brine overnight, and that's what I did last night. It is still in the brine. I am going to drain it out of its liquid, pat the chicken dry, and then I'm going to season it and wrap it back up and let it marinate in a dry rub for a couple of hours before cooking it in my oven today. My plan is to just get it started in the oven on 400 degrees, get it going, and switch over to the broiler at the end. So I'm looking for some crispy skin on my chicken thighs today. And I'll probably lightly brush it with some barbecue sauce at the end. I'm going with some no sugar added barbecue sauce today. Let's talk about a real quick barbecue seasoning. Salt, pepper, of course, a touch of cayenne pepper, chili powder, paprika, garlic powder, onion powder, and mustard powder are your basics. And then, of course, brown sugar should be in a barbecue seasoning. It is not required, but it generally is used in there because you want that little bit of sweetness. If you're like me that's trying to watch carbs, I'm not necessarily going to go with brown sugar today. I'm doing a no sugar barbecue, so that's going to be my sweetness for today. So I'm going to stick with the basics. And then the other little twist that I throw into my barbecue seasoning when I make a dry rub is I put a little bit of oregano in with that seasoning setup. I make all of my seasonings by hand. I just have a pantry full of different seasonings, and then I throw them together. That's just kind of how I've learned over the years. You learn that through experience and also just through the internet. Get the basics down, and then you can kind of generally branch out from there. Or if you don't really, want specific ratios or anything like that, something that I learned many years ago is that if I'm hanging around the grocery store and just kind of killing a little bit of time, I'll go to the seasoning aisle and I'll look at one of the specialty seasonings, like the Weber grill seasonings or something like that, and I'll flip over, look at the ingredient list, and just see what's in there. And then that kind of gives me an idea of where they're going with things. All right, so that's it for today, guys. Early video today. I'm going to try and get it out nice and quick here for you today so you get a chance to see what the picks are. Figure out what you're doing for your menu today. Let me know in the comments below. I hope you all enjoy the race. Coverage begins at 1:30 today, and the race will be at 3. I will talk to you guys tomorrow night with a race recap and let you guys know how the points played out for me and Mom in our competition. Until tomorrow, guys, I hope you guys enjoyed today's race, and I will see you all later. Thanks.